Welcome to Club E. Hi, I'm Rick Brimacombe of Brimacombe and Associates. I'm your architect of business growth. Today, we're going to be talking about navigating the COVID-19 pandemic and the future of live events and US Bank Stadium. First, I want to thank our sponsors, Irish Titan, a web development and e-commerce company, Goulet Group, CPA and advisors, Highland Bank, a family-owned community bank, Romaine Berg, a digital strategy agency, Minnesota Sales, a sales acceleration company, and the Network Connect, a catalytic gateway for growing companies. I'd like to introduce today's speaker, Mike Vekich. Mike is chair of the Minnesota Sports Facilities Authority, US Bank Stadium, and CEO at Vekich Chartered. Welcome, Mike.
Good afternoon, Rick. Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you very much for being here. It's an honor and a pleasure for those of you out there listening and watching. Mike and I are both friends as well as business contacts, so it's fun to have you here today, Mike.
Thank you. Me as well.
Good,
Me
good.
as well.
And then contact info for Mike, if you want to get a hold of him, is in the comments field, but it's Vekich at msfa.com. But again, in the comments field, and this is an interactive session. So if you have any questions, please put those in there and we will do our best to get to those questions. Mike, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, your firm. I know you're involved with a bunch of different things.
All right. Thank you, Rick. Welcome everybody to Club E here, and we'll talk about the stadium, but thank you for giving me the opportunity to give you a little bit of background. I think many know that I am a CPA, have been trained and have been in that profession for more years than I'd like to count. I started out with Deloitte, spent 5-6 years there, then joined a local firm that 2 years later that my partner and I purchased. We built that into a regional firm, ending up practicing in 9 foreign countries. So we had a very, very interesting practice. Our practice today is a part of the Baker Tilly organization. We clearly were very good accountants and auditors, but the bigger part of our practice came from the management services side, and that basically trusted advisors, mergers and acquisitions, finances, et cetera. And then I took a bent towards the turnaround of organizations and built that practice. And when I sold in 1998, I opened another firm which concentrates basically on the M&A side, turnarounds, and certainly governance. And as a segue to that, I'm currently president of the NACD, National Association of Corporate Directors, Minnesota chapter. I've had a lot of experience and fun with that. I've been very fortunate, Rick, to have a very interesting career. One side of me is the fact that I've worked with the last 6 governors and for them in different ways, shapes, and forms. Did a turnaround of the Minnesota State Lottery, not once, but twice, which was a very interesting experience for me. I just finished a long-term chair as of Minnesota State Colleges and Universities. We have 37 entities around the state and educate about 400,000 students a year. Involved with a number of boards. I got involved in banking, chair of several public companies, and then was a founder of a traditional capital bank. It's like that experience. I've always wanted to own a restaurant, so I bought one. Well, I've always wanted to be involved in banking, and I was fortunate to be a part of that. Many other organizations I've been involved with, both socially and politically. A little interesting part, I ran for governor in 2002. Just in case the audience didn't get the memo, I didn't win. But it was a wonderful experience for me, something I wanted to do for many years. And as relates to my public service, I chair the MSFA. I also was vice chair of the Minnesota Ballpark Authority, which built the Twins Stadium. That was interesting. That was from ground up. And in July of 17, Governor Dayton asked me to be chair of the MSFA that owns and operates US Bank Stadium. So it's been a very interesting experience for me. And then I spent over 3 decades as
I didn't catch that. Could you try again?
as 3 decades as captain in the Hennepin County Sheriff's Office, most specifically with the Hennepin County Sheriff's Department. Here, very highly specialized group of volunteers. So I think that gives a little overview of my background. So I've been very fortunate. I believe in paying it forward, and I thank a lot of people along the way that have helped me. So thank you, Rick.
Yeah. Well, Mike, there's so many things there that I think we're going to have you back a second time and just explore some of the different activities you've done with your career, public, private, with both sides of the aisle, working with those 6 governors, the sports. So there's so many things. I know the sheriff activity near and dear to your heart. And so I'm already going to give you a slot in the future, and we'll have you back and talk more about that.
I'd be honored. Thank you.
All right. So what I've been doing recently before diving into the actual meat of the session is just to learn a little bit more about kind of what you're doing to stay sane, healthy, active during this stay-at-home period.
Well, I think there are a lot of activities like a lot of us are doing. One of the things I like to maintain is a regimen, as though I was up every day and out. Certainly miss the interaction, with people and being involved with that. But obviously, is what we're doing today. A lot of Zoom meetings, a lot of teleconferences here, working with clients and my boards for sure. And obviously doing everything I can to stay healthy, being very smart where I go, what we're doing, wearing a mask at times, which is not the most comfortable thing for all of us, but doing that. And spending some time reading, getting caught up with that, and then having virtual happy hours with the family, but just keeping mind active and keep moving. But the clear thing is eat well and certainly get some exercise. So that's what I've been doing.
Yep. And I know we live not too far from one another. I know you've been out walking, seen you out in the neighborhood. So you are staying active.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And yard work, of course.
Yeah, of course. All right. So getting to the stadium and kind of the future of the stadium. First, let's start with just a little bit of a foundational background. Give us a little bit of history on the stadium and some background to kind of pave the way for the rest of our conversation today.
Well, as everyone knows, is that it was the dream of the Minnesota Vikings and fans to have a new stadium, and that took a long road, from the dome. But today we are celebrating our 4th year from opening, which was in 2016. And during that period of time, we average about 1.5 million visitors and guests per year. We do about 250 events a year. That's from big to small. Obviously, we host the Minnesota Vikings, and they have been our partners here. We're very honored that they're actually a part of this. We also do tours. We've done about 44,000 guests, visit us per year. We also have opportunities for for classes to come and visit. We offer educational opportunities, state-of-the-art venue, working operations, US Bank Sustainability Program, and the wonderful art collection. I know when guests come, that's really not their focus, but when you come again, when we're open, take a look at the art collection. There's about $4 to $5 million worth of original art that the Will family provided to the stadium. So this is a world-class operation for sure.
And then this year, there is maybe the potential for some commencement ceremonies given the situation.
Well, we were hoping so. We have one very large one, but just read one of the orders today that graduations will not be allowed in auditoriums or stadiums. So if they're going to do this, it's going to have to be outside. So unfortunately, we will not be able to host one of the larger ceremonies that we do each year.
Unless the order changes and
Yeah.
things.
I would not expect that to occur.
Okay.
But if you want to hold it in the outside football field or parking lots, et cetera, I understand what the order says.
All right. And then we did get a question that came in ahead of time from Michael asking about your sustainability and other projects along that area. So maybe just talk a little bit about that.
That's a great question. I appreciate being asked. Since prior to the Super Bowl, the stadium has been a zero waste facility. And of course, as the Super Bowl came, we were ready, we were prepared. That was one of the requirements for the Super Bowl. And we've continued that process going forward. We still have a strong commitment to sustainability. So I think all of our guests can be assured that we will. The interesting part will be as to how we serve food and beverage going forward, what the protocols will be. But we are committed to sustainability, and I appreciate the question.
Sure, sure. So obviously things are evolving. Can't predict the future. You don't have a crystal ball as much as I'm sure you'd like one, or we'd like to hear from you if you had one. But what do you anticipate the return of the events to actually look like, and when do you think that might be happening?
Well, let me start from the top here is that for a prediction, the events industry was the first to get canceled and most likely will be the last to get into full swing. Lots of speculation, around that. We think that if a vaccine is discovered very quickly, I think the return to arenas and convention centers and stadiums will see a spike. But until then, we have to measure what the consumer speculation is, and maybe also use the word fear. So that's going to be interesting, to see. We're working closely with our partners. Those are with events. Those, of course, with other stadiums here, Minnesota Department of Health, et cetera, CDC. We clearly will see a change in protocols going forward. Right now, we have a few smaller events on the books. We'll see as this order gets lifted when our venues get to be a part of that process and coming. But any major events, there's one concert that's still on the books. We'll know June 1st whether or not they will reschedule there. And if they do cancel, then really, right, we're saying large events right now would be the preseason for the Minnesota Vikings and their season going forward. But one of the things, we're clearly going to see is a focus on cleanliness. And I like to emphasize the fact is that the stadium is a leader as it relates to cleanliness, et cetera. So we will see an enhancement around that. So what works for a stadium is not going to work for a theater or any other event in where they are. We clearly need to be nimble. I think we've been chatting a lot with our two major vendors. One is ASM Global. They do operate in the stadium for us. And our food and beverage operators, Aramark. So obviously these ASM is the largest in the world in what they do. Aramark is also very large. Close discussions with them. They are doing everything they can in their own venue areas to get protocols in place. So It will be interesting to see here. I think you'll see shields being put up as you do in retail stores. You'll see some of that. We'll also be seeing, as you come in, maybe a temperature taken. Also, and maybe ask some questions in order to keep that. So we're not really sure yet, and I think a big part of that, Rick, will come when we see the full layout of the football season. What protocols will the NFL
Sure.
insist upon? We've been working closely with the Minnesota Vikings and getting their thoughts. So obviously, main purpose, health and safety of our guests and also our employees here. So I can say with great assurance that when you come to US Bank Stadium, you know that we will be in full process of the protocols and also the processes used by CDC. So the first piece of this might be this concert, but not a lot of hope on that.
Okay.
But right from there, we'll go right into the football season, which I think a lot of people are anticipating.
And hoping for. So currently, what's the status of the stadium? What's it like right now?
It's very quiet as you go to the stadium. Jim Farstead, who's our executive director, and I get to the stadium every once in a while, so it's very quiet. So we have restricted essential employees and to essential workers. So we are maintaining a process. There are no visitors there, of course. We're continuing on with routine maintenance. We'll make sure that the stadium's safe and security is there. But then also taking a look at continued deep cleaning here as we operate that. Obviously, being on the finance side, you'll understand that has reduced costs, substantially, and we'll continue, to do that. We're also, as I think many have seen, the outside of the stadium right now. Instead of the look that it has, it looks blue, and that is the work that we're doing as it relates to the construction project and the mediation we just completed for the change out of that. And I can assure those that are listening in, the construction workers take it very serious. We have social distancing. Everyone goes through a check every day of temperature, asked questions, so that they clearly know that they're staying healthy also.
Sure.
So it's very, very quiet. We're sharing ideas with other venues locally and around the country as we all get ready to reopen.
Okay. So you talked a little bit in the history, the number of events and the number of visitors. Numbers were frankly a lot larger than I thought. 1.5 million visitors, 250 events. How do you estimate the economic impact of the coronavirus on the stadium?
I really can't get into all of the specific details, but you can imagine it's enormous cost to the stadium, not counting what's happening to our friends around the city, just in these venues alone. So it's been massive. All the events that have been canceled here, months of work has been done in getting all these events lined up. And now they're either have been canceled or rescheduled. And ASM has been doing a great job of working closely with those events to get them rescheduled, and we'll continue to work along those lines. So as we try to get back into the new normal here, we know the impact's been significant to our own operations and financially. But the other thing, that we take in consideration of all the people that come to work, when you're talking about a football game or a large event, when you have about 3,000 part-time workers, that's very tough too. The impact that's been on them has been a big concern. of ours and making sure as well as that because they're employed by either ASM or Aramark, they're working very closely with with them. So people have been furloughed, very much a diminished crowd right now.
So are there other things you can do to provide support for them, or what have you all been doing from your side to take care of your staff and the service partners?
Excuse me. With our staff, we continue. We have a very small staff, a total of 4. They all are working from home there, as well as some of a lot of the folks for ASM and Aramark. The same thing, they're working from home and continue to work. Some have been furloughed for different weeks and then, continue to work. So we've been watching that very, very carefully. And I think we're all hoping that come May 18th, we have a better outlook that's here. The order should be lifted unless something else occurs, and get everybody back into the workforce full time.
Sure. So let's just pretend, not going to put you into the crystal ball business, but let's just pretend the state lifts the order on the 18th. Let's say that the NFL season moves ahead for the sake of argument. Let's pretend that concert does not happen. So when do your employees start to go back to work, and what does the kind of the ramp up look like?
I think that's a really good question. May 18th will obviously be a watershed mark to see what we can do. As I mentioned earlier in my comment, we were the first to be, shut down and probably the last to be open. That will depend on several things. One, are we fully back in business after May 18th? Or what's the protocol for that? The second is the protocol for cleanliness and people entering the stadium. Will it be totally socially distanced, or will it take a time for, let's say, a big event that might be of 5,000 people? Is it really going to be just set for about 2,000? We don't know that. In our plans, I can tell you that ASM and Aramark and ourselves have been working very closely about all those different scenarios, and that will determine how we get our part-time workforce back into this swing of things. So, crystal ball, a bit fuzzy right now here, but I can assure those listening that we clearly have been working on plans, and we can execute. I can assure you also, we will be ready to open those doors when things occur.
Sure. And is there any kind of special thing? You have two different audiences in the sense of you have this large employee workforce. I think you mentioned a couple of thousand part-time workers, and then you have all the guests that are attending. So you kind of have these two different audiences that you need to take into consideration when you're trying to keep everybody safe.
Yes. Well, let's start with the employees. Of course, their health and safety is number one, also including our guests. Two, there will be extensive work done on education with our employees, so they know how to keep safe and work clearly with our guests. When you have a large event like a football team coming up and players, what will be that social distancing? I sense there will be with that. So is it half the capacity? And so people will be able to, to work around that. Smaller events like a wedding party, birthday events, of course, are a lot smaller. Those are I think a lot easier to accommodate here and do social distancing, et cetera. So we're working on those scenarios about from large to small, what we do get in. But clearly, we will see a protocol around taking temperature, asking questions. They'll probably be sanitizing hands as you come in. Expanded amounts of sanitation areas will be available. So that's I think, Rick, where we're going. It's not known totally right now, but we have been a leader in the stadium and in cleanliness, and we want to continue to be. So we believe we'll be ahead of the curve.
Okay, a little bit of a crystal ball question. I apologize for it, but I have to ask. So, do you have any sense about the NFL season in that they're targeting your first home game for the regular season would be mid-September? Do you have any sense, or have you gotten any feedback from the Wilfs or the NFL as to what dates they're trying to hit as far as trying to make decisions about making mid-September happen?
Two things. One, with the NFL, it's a lot what we hear right now. So there's not a direct contact with the NFL. As it relates to the Minnesota Vikings, we're almost in daily contact. I think right now they are shooting for the schedule that's come out here. I think the next part will be, are there additional protocols that the NFL wants to put in place? So I would say that within the next 30 days, maybe 45 at the latest, we should have a pretty good idea of where the NFL and the team will come down.
Okay. And then one of the other things that was interesting to me that we talked a little bit about beforehand is the number of events that you have that are smaller events. You mentioned 250 events. Obviously, the Vikings don't play 250 times, so you do a number of smaller events. So talk a little bit about what those look like.
Oh, there's the great events. There's the home show here, the RV show. There are a number of weddings and birthdays, etc. They'll have large events, as we had last year with the Schwann Corporation, where they take over the whole field. Those are the kind of events that fill in the rest of the year. We had a crack group at ASM that knows how to put those together. We certainly are prepared to handle those going forward. But that keeps the stadium busy. And in between all of that, we have large events. Of course, I'd like to talk about one big event we had here that was, just unfortunate, and that was the Ncaa wrestling championships. That, just so everybody understands, that took 2+ years to plan, to go through the bidding process, coming through. This is the first time the Ncaa wrestling has been in a stadium, and we were prepared to do that. One of the largest events, probably double or triple the number of people that would normally come to that. So we got notice that, no fans. We're going to play, but no fans. A week later, he said, it's done. And then after that, the Ncaa canceled the men's, basketball, etc. Those events are really major things for this entity. It had an impact, obviously on the stadium, always on the city of Minneapolis, the restaurants, and everything that you can think about. I think we have learned a lot, from this process and how to be nimble. And I think we're nimble enough right now that if we can ramp up quickly for events, we're going to be ready for them.
Okay. Well, and I have to put a plug in for my father, who is a wrestler. So I actually know Minnesota is a wrestling state. The Big Ten is a wrestling conference. And so that was a big blow to Minnesota and Gophers and wrestling fans that was canceled.
Very much so. Very much so. It was. It's amazing to watch. It's very much a family driven event. people were very, very excited, to be a part of that. Lots of disappointments, but at the end of the day, it's about safety and keeping people healthy.
Of course. So I know it seems like a million years ago because of all that's going on now, but talk a little bit about the Final Four, what you learned, what was fun, maybe what was harder than you thought.
That's a great question. It was just about the time, probably about 6-7 months before my appointment.
Okay.
So I came in right at that point to take over. It was a very large undertaking. The coordination between the Ncaa, the city of Minneapolis, all of the partners, the local operating committee. For me, it was a lot of fun. I learned a lot. I have to tell you, Rick, I've learned a lot being in this position with the stadium as chair. A number of things way beyond what I thought would be in my wheelhouse. So as we got that ready, and then the big part of this is getting all those games coming down to the championship. But the big part, on one hand, it was difficult, but on the other hand, other side, it was exquisite. The way ASM took the requirements of the Ncaa, converted that stadium, and at the end of the day, it looked like an arena. Where you're right down on the floor, very intimate, to the playing surface, and getting ready for that. It was a huge undertaking, extremely difficult because of the conversion, that center hung screen, getting that in place here, and of course it was an investment on behalf of the taxpayers to bring that here. But I think the economic impact for Minneapolis and St. Paul, maybe some other areas, was phenomenal. So we were honored to have them here, and we're in the process of talking about them coming back.
Sure.
And I hope they come back soon.
And then how about that same question on the Super Bowl? What did you learn? What was fun? What was maybe more challenging than you thought?
Well, it's interesting as you compare the two. For the Ncaa, really for us, strong hands-on part of that. For a Super Bowl, the NFL comes in and plays a lot larger role than normal, but working in coordination of converting the stadium for that. Again, that was just a few months for my time being involved, so I got at the end of it. But all in all, we learned a lot about wayfinding and how they set up their processes, for sure. They left a lot of improvements upon their exit, for sure. And the security around it is one of the senior security folks, told Jim Farston and I, said, this is the most boring operational activity we've had. And that's a good thing, because as you can see, the security, everything that happened was, I'd like to use the word flawless. And I'm so proud of, our team, at the stadium, and also working with the city of Minneapolis, Meet Minneapolis, and of course, Melvin Tennant, the president of Meet Minneapolis.
Yep. So we've had a number of different questions that came in, including one from longtime listener and Clubby supporter Eric about how events work. You've covered a number of different things. So I'm going to take the conversation a little different direction, and you just touched on it, security. So question from a listener, how does a facility like US Bank Stadium think about managing security at the very highest level? And how does management stay on top of the changing risks and configurations for so many large events?
Let me start with the latter. We're talking about a very experienced team here, both at the operational level and our security level. I have great confidence in what I've seen from our security team and our head of security here, and I've watched that for that 3-year period I've been involved. Always running through what is working. So we coordinate with the city of Minneapolis, the FBI, Secret Service, and then of course Homeland Security and others here. So always exchange of ideas in how to protect our employees and guests. So that's always happening. I can't discuss obviously specifics of security, but I can tell you, at least from, as I share with you, some of my background in law enforcement, you can feel very safe at this stadium here, highest work that's being done. So as we look at events, if you're coming to the stadium for a small event, we've got security at that level. All large events clearly have a heightened approach to that to make sure that everything is well covered. We've got all of the things in place you would expect any stadium or anything that would have events for large events and working with individuals. So the team is strong. We coordinate often with the entities I just talked about, and we're always on top of the current technology. The technology around that part of it, just security, is world class.
So actually, great opener for the next question. So talk a little bit about some of the new technologies that you're relying on to help folks feel comfortable and have peace of mind at events. That's
a great question. Also, we've already started on some of that technology even prior to the pandemic. One of the things we've equipped the stadium with a new air purification technology. It's called Atmos Air, and we installed that in 2019. And it basically restores indoor air to its natural state through an ionization process. We've been watching that from two standpoints. One for sure is the cost savings that have been generated, and that has, but also the quality of the air. I think you'll find that what it does, it restores the air as though you're breathing outside air in the simplest form. So it's fresh, it's ionized. Every time I'm in the stadium prior to a larger event or just walking through it from time to time, you can tell the difference. So clearly that's a big part of it. The other part of technology we'll be implementing is thermal scanning. That can be done in one of two ways. One is the handheld as you walk in, and maybe some of us have already experienced that process. Somebody putting this handheld up to our forehead, see if we have a temperature or not. And then also we have the touchless side, which would be part of our use of facial recognition and being able to scan the crowds and take a look and see if there are any hot spots, if I could use that term, for individuals. So I think going forward, I think we're going to see the technology expand. We'll continue to research that area, and we always do. We're on top of technology always. That's number one. Two, I think the new normal will be clearly thermal scanning for sure, and how we get people in and out. Possibly we're going to take a look at social distancing. If you've been to a football game, and many have, it's as you get through the security, everybody was moving at one time in large crowds, but I think we will continue to see social distancing for some time.
So actually, it sounds like there's some silver linings or positivity that could come out of this virus period.
Yes, I think it is. I think we should. On one hand, the pandemic has been unfortunate, for sure. there are lots of silver linings as I see them. The learnings of one piece has been good, technology that's coming along with that. But the other piece too, excuse me, has been Airmark obviously pre-ordering, ready for seasons, et cetera. So there's a lot of food and beverage around. And the fact is that we were able to donate, all of that food and beverage, to charities, most specifically to the House of Charities. So we've been able to help folks providing food, providing meals going forward. A lot of public, personal interest stories, that I've heard. I'm sure you have and others here. So it's the learnings from this. If we look at them on a positive basis, kind of reimagine what we can be doing. I think this great entrepreneurial spirit that we have here in the United States and in Minnesota, we're going to see some very interesting things, and I'm looking forward to it.
Good. So kind of a fun question from Matt. He was curious as to what your favorite thing or part of the stadium is.
That's a really good question. There are so many pieces of it, but I think, obviously having the honor to be in this role and to oversee this large public asset has been really a lot of fun for me. I've learned many things here and about operations and the team, but I think the biggest thing is when events are here, going around and visiting with our guests and being a part of those that are stadium seats and into the clubs and suites. That's a great part of it because you see the excitement about everything that's going on, and I think that's the fun part. The relationships that Jim Farstad and I have had a chance to meet with our outside partners in the city of Minneapolis and Meet Minneapolis and those that are putting events together. It's that's really been a great joy for me, and I'm really honored that Governor Dayton appointed me to this position and then reappointed by Governor Walz.
Okay. Last formal question for you. When you look out into the future, again, a little bit crystal ball-like, but what do you foresee as some of the necessities to reopen, or what kinds of things do you think are going to happen?
That's a good question, Rick. I think clear expectations, from the CDC, public officials, public policy in Minnesota Department of Health. We need to have a clear understanding around that. That will end up putting into place the kinds of protocols we need to have. I think ASM Global is prepared, as well as Airmark, to follow through on those. And hopefully we're in the process of anticipating some of that. But I think the first piece is, when are we be allowed to open? What are the protocols from a public policy standpoint that need to be in place? And secondly, that we are prepared to follow through on those and be world-class. And I know we will be world-class, and you'll be comfortable coming to US Bank Stadium.
Great. Well, I have no doubt about that, knowing what I know about you, and have had the privilege of calling you a friend for a long time. So I know for sure you'll have the stadium ready to go whenever you're allowed to reopen it. Any final closing kind of thoughts, perspectives, anything else you'd like to share as we wrap things up?
Well, I'm certainly not the Oracle from Nebraska, but from Omaha, I should say. But I think, first of all, we wish everyone, continued health and staying healthy for sure. The second thing is, if you have ideas, share them with us. We certainly will do that. The third is, when you walk into US Bank Stadium, you can be assured that we will follow all of the health protocols. It will continue to be clean as it is, and even cleaner. We will continue with our processes of sustainability, which is a value of ours. And third, we will pull off every event that's presented to us in a world-class manner. And everybody can be very proud of US Bank Stadium and everything that we stand for. So we are looking forward to welcoming everyone back. If you can't come for a game, come and visit us, take a tour. Give me a call. We'll talk about that too.
All right. Well, we have a big Club E audience, so you might be fielding a lot of requests for that. Remind everybody, Mike, how they can get a hold of you.
You can get a hold of me at Vekich at msfa.com. It's on the screen, and I will get back to you quickly with any of your questions or comments.
Yeah. Well, again, Mike, thank you very much. It's been a privilege to have you here. Great conversation, wonderful insights. Everybody's clamoring to get back to the stadium and sports and other events. And so, again, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you for the privilege of being a part of Club E. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.